and Executive Director of Quadra Systems.net India Private Limited, one of India's most well-known private and public cloud solution providers. Quadra has the unique distinction of winning 38 global awards for technology innovation from Microsoft. These global recognitions have put Quadra in the forefront of the IT services and consulting ecosystem worldwide. In addition, Quadra has won over 30 national awards from players such as Citrix, Oracle, Adobe, and Symantec for excellence in technology services. Prashanth is also the first recipient of Microsoft's prestigious Global Sales Excellence Award, which recognizes technical skills and solution capability from industry experts from across 160 countries. Prashanth has been recognized by the Coimbatore Management Association with the Best SME Entrepreneur Award. Rotary Coimbatore has also conferred Quadra with their Professional Excellence Award. The chairman of the Confederation of Indian Industry Coimbatore, Prashanth Subramaniam, enjoys reading, photography, and driving. Nishita and Nikita Baliarsingh are the founders of Nexus Power, a startup that builds lithium-free, biodegradable electric vehicle batteries from crop residue. Nexus Power is inspired by the concepts of industrial ecology and biomimicry. The enterprise is speeding up the process of EV adaptation and facilitating massive growth in the agricultural industry too. Nishita and Nikita have been awarded multiple times. They were featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, Entrepreneur Magazine's Shepreneur Women to Watch, Vogue India's Women at the Workplace Special Edition, MG Motors and the Better India's Changemakers Season 3, and PMI's Global Future 50, to name a few. The pair has also been felicitated by the government of Odisha for their innovative work and contribution towards the startup ecosystem in the state. Giridhar JG is the CEO of Sierra ODC, an offshore software development service provider. Sierra's flagship offering is the eFacility Enterprise Facility Management System, the most comprehensive, easy to implement, state-of-the-art automation tool for the facility management domain with 35 plus stellar modules. The eFacility building in Coimbatore is rated as the world's second highest ranking green building under the US Green Building Council's LEED rating system NCB 2009. It is India's highest ranking green building under the India Green Buildings Council's Green New Buildings rating system. In 2022, the eFacility building became India's highest ranking WELL Platinum certified healthy building, rated by International Well Building Institute under the WELL version 2 rating with a score of 86 out of 100. Sierra ODC is the only software company in the country to achieve this.
Prashanth, the stage is all yours, and because you're the last panel, you have unlimited time.
All right. Thank you, Pradeep. Couple of things. Giving us the last session is definitely, you're testing my ability to hold the audience, and I hope we manage to do it. I have a stellar panel. Secondly, on the topic green everything, it's almost like Pradeep decided, all the rest of the topics, Prashanth will take care. Green everything. Give the rest of the topics to him. So that's where we are. So I just want to start today's session and take you back, to one of the things that you dread doing on a hot summer day. And what is that? Getting into a parked car. Right? Can you just? I know we are in Coimbatore. At least we are enjoying the beginning of monsoon. But if you can imagine how difficult it is to get into a parked car, in the middle of summer, and imagine that you can't roll down your glasses. You have to stay with the glasses rolled up and sit inside the car for 5 minutes. Sounds impossible, right? You literally suffocate. And you don't have an option to roll down the windows, you don't have an option to go ahead and even switch the AC on. No, that is how we are. That is how we are treating our planet every day because of greenhouse gas emissions. That is what is happening to our planet every single day as we keep releasing greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And how much of it? I know our padman, Padma Shri Dr. Arunachalam talked about problems. There's 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases that we pump into the atmosphere every single year. Even if we were going to switch off emissions by some wave of a magic wand, you are not going to get this problem over with. You're still going to have to contend with the billions of tons of greenhouse gases that is already in the atmosphere. So we are facing a problem of epic proportions, and we are facing a problem where we are suffocating ourselves. And when you read about these increases, right, it looks like something small, 1 degree increase, 2 degree increase, and it makes you think, what's the big deal about a 1 or 2 degree increase? That could just be, a blip in the measurement. But if you actually observe the trend over time, while there is always a fluctuation up and down, you'll see the trend is consistently going up. And that actually means a lot when it's in the context of the earth. When you say 1 degree or 2 degree in the context of the earth, it means hot places are going to get hotter, wet places are going to get wetter, cities are going to go down. Famous coastal cities, a city like Mumbai, a city like Chennai is at danger of disappearing. At least a portion of it is in danger of disappearing. So these are huge problems that we have to contend with, and it's important that we take action right now, because as the saying goes, as the theme of GreenCon goes, there is no planet B. Now, how do we attack this? What do we do? And how do we start solving this problem? The problem can be solved in multiple ways. There are so many approaches to get this done, but I want to explore the problem from the insights of the brilliant panelists that we have today, Nishita and Nikita, as well as Giridhar. And I want to help them, and this is, I promise you, this is the last of the talking I'll be doing. I want to listen to them, because I'm here just like you to listen to them, is to understand from their lenses, because they have taken some unique approaches to solve this problem. Energy is a fundamental need of mankind. And energy contributes to at least 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Buildings are something that we can't live without, right? I mean, we are in a massive building. God knows how many million tons of carbon dioxide this building would have generated from the cement use, from the concrete, the construction material, the interiors, the carpets. We can't just imagine. We're probably sitting in a building that's contributed millions of tons of carbon dioxide in terms of emissions. So is there a way to tackle the problem from two perspectives? One is from energy and the other is from buildings. And that's what we will try to address with our panel today. So let me pose the first question to Giridhar. Because the common problem that we all face is whenever we say green something, eco-friendly something, the first thing that comes up is, that's expensive. It's not going to be sustainable. It's very difficult to implement. So these are the reasons why we don't go into things. And let me call myself a guilty party, because when Giridhar was building his office, I was building my office as well. And I knew through a common friend, Yusuf, that Giridhar was implementing the green building concepts in every little detail. And I was thinking, but I need to get my office ready fast. I'll probably think of it for the second project, but now let me get the office ready fast. But then somebody like Giridhar got his office ready faster, but also got it done in an eco-friendly manner. So it's time for us to stop thinking that green is not sustainable, in the sense economically viable or economically sustainable. It is. But the person who can answer that question is Giridhar. So Giridhar, my first question to you. When you talk about green, and people like me, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience, can you give us some insights on, is green really sustainable? Is it environmentally and economically viable? Can you give us some insights from your experience?
Thanks very much, Prashanth. So, just to explain a little bit on the green buildings, many doesn't know that 40% of our total energy globally finally consumed is consumed by the buildings, both residential and commercial. And so that's why the green building movement started about 30 years back. The first, specs came in, and so what the green buildings have to address, so one is 40% of the global energy, then 50% of the landfill goes from buildings, and about 12% of the total water use, and 35% of the total carbon emission is because of buildings. So it may outwardly look like it's more to do with vehicles and factories, but then buildings are the global consumers of energy. And that's how the green building movement started to reverse this or to improve this. And so the concept of the green buildings is that green buildings can help you achieve almost 30% energy efficiency just by following their norms, doing certain small changes here and there. You'll be able to achieve on an average about 30% energy. You can, water you can save about 50 to 80%. So that's huge. Again, waste, there are buildings which, 50 to 90% you can save, and thereby the carbon emissions really reduces a lot. So that's how this momentum has been going on for a long 30 years now. And for me, green was about 15 years before when I visited one of my clients in the Middle East. They were rated as the Middle East first platinum rated green building, and it was opened by the then US General Secretary Condoleezza Rice. And so that actually created a buzz there, and I could visit there, and that's the time when I understood green is more than solar. Green is about waste, green is about water, green is about the entire resources and the emissions. And that is when I decided, when we build a building in Coimbatore, then I wanted my software development center to be a green building. And so that time, when maybe 10 years later, when we started building the building, so we found that the only gold rated building was available in Coimbatore. And so we thought, okay, why not we be the first platinum rated green building? So that's how we started the project. So that time again, my knowledge level was not great. And so when we started working, so generally the consultants suggest you get this much points, you get a platinum rating. So that's how it started. But then we started understanding when, we don't have deep pockets, and we were working with very tight, I'm an entrepreneur myself and own funding. And so we had to generate the funds and build it. And so it was very challenging. And so we were to keep the costs very, very low. So people said about you may end up spending about 10-15% or even 20% more by going green. And so they were discouraging us initially. But then we decided, no, we'll try it. And so then we started getting into understanding each of the norms and seeing why not this, how much it's going to cost extra and all that. We started doing it. And that is the time we got exposed to all the parameters suggested by the green buildings. And so we decided to follow it as much as we can. But then as we work, it's all about, it's not only about the energy, it's also about the indoor air environmental quality, and it's going to affect the people going to, spend half the time of their life there within buildings. And so that's when we realized the health factor is also a very important factor. And so we started wanting to follow everything. And then we tried to implement everything, and that's how we became the world #2 green building. And so coming to the cost aspects, many are surprised when I say that we could reduce on the capital costs. One small example I can give is my air conditioning load, which was proposed initially when we started the building, versus when we pushed them to achieve the green building norms and reduce the energy load and things like that. Ultimately, by designing the building better, by using better quality glasses and better insulation for the building and all that, we could reduce the load by about 40% was the saving on the capital costs on air conditioning we could achieve by just following the norms. And so this resulted in much more today we are, our energy cost is 60% lesser than any other typical building. We save about 82% water. We use 82% less water compared to similar buildings. And we are a carbon neutral company. and like even waste, we have made it zero waste, and all those things came through the green building norm. So unlike the other areas, like green building has excellent definitions, and so we just followed that and we could achieve that. So operational costs, we all know, like, if we are saving 60% on energy, it's huge. And operational costs, everyone understands that it comes down when you go green. But then even capital costs can come down because your capacities are reduced and your peak demand energy load is going to be reduced. So that's going to save you a lot on the on this. And then the materials, again, when one small example could be bricks. So red bricks are old, and today we have fly ash bricks, which are made from cement, waste from the cement industries. And so today, fly ash bricks, if you use fly ash bricks and construct, it'll be cheaper than your red bricks. So that's how things are changing. So more awareness, more adoption, and automatically things can change. So it looks very promising that way.
Thank you, Giridhar. So clearly, there is economic sense in going green. And I think that's the most important point, and that's the most important takeaway that we all need to take from this insight that you provided. Now let's move on to the other source of emissions, right, which is electricity, energy. I mean, that's something that we can't all do without. So Nishita and Nikita, the two twins, Nikita on this, oh, there you go, see, Nikita and Nishita. Right, I've been trying to get this right, and I'll probably try it before I conclude the session. So they have taken a very innovative approach to solve this problem. As you know, electric vehicles are definitely becoming more and more popular, but electric vehicles in this conventional form, by using batteries, also contribute to a lot of, I would say, environmental pollution, because they require heavy metals, they require rare earths, and the very process of mining for batteries itself is an environmentally degrading process. I think. And sometimes when you're not taking electricity from renewable or clean sources, you're basically moving pollution from point A to point B. So just going for an electric vehicle alone is not the solution, which is where a lot of innovative solutions need to come into the picture. And that's what Nexus Power, spearheaded by Nishita and Nikita, are doing. So would one of you want to answer, how are you tackling this problem of clean energy? And the way you're looking at tackling this problem is very different, right? I mean, you're not going for sodium ion, you're not going for the newer technologies like hydrogen fuel cells, but you said, like, I will create a battery from biodegradable waste, and that's amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about what this is? Who would like to go?
Hi, good evening. Normally very rare that I speak first because apparently Nishita is the CEO for Nexus, but when I find the chance, I actually keep the mic to myself. Right, so yeah, we actually have a very different approach, as Mr. Prashanth mentioned. So it didn't actually start with the idea of making batteries out of crop waste or agricultural waste. The idea was to make electric vehicles because we were very fascinated about vehicles and how electric vehicles were actually picking the light back then, but not really too many years back, but still. So we were quite fascinated and we wanted to make them, but what we realized was that there are certain concerns with the battery pack that goes into the vehicle, which is actually the heart of the vehicle. So until you actually treat the battery pack or you do something good with that, you cannot make very sustainable or developable electric vehicles so that people can buy them. And most of the problems that we address, like we had a session in the morning by Mr. Padman who said that you have to look for a problem when you have to start a company or you want to be an entrepreneur, look for a problem. So the problems that we actually addressed were more consumer-centric than the manufacturer-centric in electric vehicles, which was, people had a concern with the vehicles being expensive because the batteries are expensive. Again, because lithium is a very rare, very scarce material. So to procure that and to make the batteries, it is a very expensive process. So we wanted to address these certain concerns that, the batteries need to be cheaper. The material should not be scarce. It has to be abundantly available so that you can, multiply this entire application to huge numbers and you can have it globally manufactured at any location possible. And third, and I think, of course, not the least, the most important for us, that the battery should not be hazardous. It should not cause problems to people and to the environment altogether. So that is how we started on this journey of trying to make batteries or trying to make battery cells. And during that time of research, we actually stumbled upon a book from our grandfather's library, which said that proteins are beneficial in electrolytes. For those of you who are not aware, electrolyte is one part of a battery cell. So you have a positive terminal, a negative terminal, and the electrolyte. So proteins were beneficial in electrolytes, and that's where we picked it up from. We said, if it can be beneficial in electrolytes, I'm sure it can help make the entire battery cell. And we began our journey from there. And somewhere in between, in parallel space, there was this real news of the air quality index going really bad in the northern part of India, in Delhi, NCR, in Punjab and Haryana. And that was happening because the farmers were actually burning the stubble, the crop remains, after their harvest was complete. So now, again, we were very fond of sustainability concepts, and we wanted to do something to that as well. We wanted to address that concern. So I think we just tried to collect a few samples of that crop waste, and we extracted our proteins from there, and then we made our prototypes. So because it worked well for us, the experiment was quite successful, the entire cycle of Nexus came together. So it was just trial and error, and it was, somehow the universe conspiring to get you what you want, and that's how Nexus came into the picture. So there was no initial goal, or there was no eureka moment that happened with us. It was just things that fell into place one after the other.
Thank you. I mean, that's pretty enlightening, right? And it's a very different take. I would say a very, very different take to a problem which is vexing some of the best minds in the industry. And you know that when players as big as Reliance go out and buy tech sodium ion technology companies, then you really start to begin to understand the scale of this problem, because when Reliance does something, you can bet that they will go mega scale, right? So, a follow-up question. Now, how important is energy efficiency, in all these batteries? Because that's, to me, what can solve things like range anxiety, or whether batteries can really last the way they're supposed to, be on paper, and then make this a viable mode, not just something that you use for a short jaunt in the city, but also something that you can depend on for a reasonable degree, at least 90% of your transportation needs. And we all know, even with conventional technology, there's been quite a bit of concern around range, battery performance drops, and I don't even want to go around to the fires and other issues. But with this technology, how do you think you can address the efficiency problem, right? Basically, if you feed in 100 units of energy, and how much of units of energy can you, make sure you derive useful energy from the battery, number one. And number two, how do you think this problem can be addressed? Because you have stumbled upon a remarkable idea. How do you think the government or the industry and others can help contribute to helping you refine this? Because it has to be a concerted effort. It has to be that way, because only then adoption will take off. So would you like to answer this question?
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think I'd love to answer that. So, if you look at the entire industry as a whole, it's a collective effort, which not only includes battery manufacturers, it includes the charging infrastructure, it includes the EV manufacturers, it also includes the consumers. So it's more cyclic in nature. So it's a space where you do not have any standard numbers. So it's not like one size fits all, and it's not like you have everything established as yet. So what we consider available is what we consider as standard right now. For example, we have lithium-ion batteries. That is what is being majorly used across the industry. So whatever numbers the lithium-ion batteries guarantee is what you consider standard right now. Typically, there is nothing written or there is nothing established as to what could be the standard. So anything better, anything worse is typically acceptable, given that there aren't any standards. And the reason I mentioned that it's a collective effort is because it's everybody's need and their want which has to be matched. It's more like a demand and supply. So if I'm having a supply for about 1,000 cycles of charge, and my consumers demand for about 1500 cycles, which gives them a better range, then we go back in the R&D to look at a possibility of whether we can increase that 1000 to 1500. So it's not like you have everything established and ready. It's again trial and error. It goes back and forth. So until a couple of years ago, somewhere around 2013, 2014, when we had EVs just coming into the market, we had lead acid batteries, and lithium was still being talked about then. So at that point, a typical standard range was about 40 to 50 kilometers for a two-wheeler specifically, and that was accepted. Eventually, people thought that there's a problem. Maybe we want 70 to 80 kilometers, and eventually lithium-ion batteries entered in, and now they give you 70 to 80 kilometers. You move a little further, say 2025, 2024, people now, they're looking at a range of 100, 120, 150 kilometers on the same vehicle. So right now, lithium is almost at its full capacity, so you cannot really increase the range there. So what you're looking at is a battery swapping, because the charging time still remains an issue. So if I talk about battery technologies, if I talk about how the industry is evolving, it's more like a pull strategy than I would say a push, because it's the consumers who drive the need. It's the consumers who want to see whether the offering they have is acceptable or they want something better. The consumers always want value for money. So somebody who is spending about 80,000 to 1 lakh rupees on a vehicle, they would definitely want advanced features, which manufacturers today try and couple up with some interactive features, which is like a touchscreen odometer or a Wi-Fi enabled navigation system, or maybe an auto lock on the two-wheelers, things like that, because you actually are adding value to the product. And the problem still remains on the technical side. So we're just trying to cover up the technical side with enhanced technology features with the Wi-Fi and auto lock and etc. etc. But coming back to the battery R&D space, if you have to look at how batteries are evolving, so until a long time we still didn't have lithium commercial. Eventually that technology was brought commercial. Until then we had lead acid, we had nickel cadmium, we have cobalt based batteries. So we've had different chemistries all through since the very beginning, since batteries have actually started coming into existence, and eventually they've been progressing. So technologies that we're talking about today, we're also talking about sodium ion, we're talking about graphene based technologies, aluminum air. So typically these are technologies which have been taking rounds since battery technology has existed. So the technology that we're talking about, a protein-based battery, the book that we read and which gave us this insight was a book of 1956. So it's that old as a technology, which is typically established. I mean, it's proven, but it's not established as such, because at that point we got easier ways of developing products. Similarly, a graphene battery has been under research for like 30 years now, and we are very close to having commercial manufacturing for graphene batteries, which typically are supercapacitors. They charge in 5 minutes. They give you a better support. Lithium graphene batteries could give you 10 times better range than what you have today. So it's simply the fact that it's more of a pull. So when the consumers demand, you try and evolve, you try and do the R&D, you try and push what they demand from you. So it's not like everything is standard, or it's not like we have all numbers with us. We only work on what the consumers want us, and it's a complete chain reaction. So the consumers demand from the EV manufacturers demand from their original equipment manufacturers, and the original equipment manufacturers come down to their cell level manufacturers, and that's where we come in when we get back to the R&D, and then we try and solve that problem which the consumers have highlighted in their need.
Thank you. That really makes it clear. I want to pick out something that you just talked about, right? You talked about air pollution in North India, and I know Giridhar has done a lot of, he's thought about the problem a lot. And I remember Giridhar had some slides that he showed to me some time back. I don't know if it's possible to pull out. Is it possible to pull out some of those slides? Yes, we can. Because you have to see the amount of effort that someone has put into making this happen. And Giridhar, if you can talk a little bit about indoor air pollution and why that is so important.
Right. Thanks, Prashanth. So this is something like regarding the glacier melting and water level increasing and floods and droughts due to climate change. Most of us know about all these things. and we are trying to see how far like we can control it, or how quickly this can be reversed. So while people are talking about it, most of us do not know how it is impacting the health, because the displacement of people, or some drought and things can lead to a lot of poverty and things like that. So life again, definitely there is a we understand all that, but see, this could the global emissions can completely affect the health of the entire globe. So that's what is coming out in the recent research or research conclusions. And so like regarding the carbon dioxide, see, generally we have been looking at more about indoor environmental quality under that carbon dioxide. So when you go out, so your carbon dioxide level is less, you go to mountains, you feel very good. The reason is the CO2 levels are slightly lower compared to the plains, and so we call it mountain quality, fresh air and all that. So, but when we come into the cities, the air is pretty polluted, and when we come into the indoors, so outdoor, like compared to the outdoor, the indoor air quality is much more worse. So in densely occupied buildings, like maybe in this, this hall today, like we may be looking at about 1,200, 1,300 ppm is the CO2 level, which I am thinking, because of the amount of ventilation I can see. The ventilation is very poor right now, because they want to give you good weather, good, your temperature, and that time if they bring in a lot of outside air which may be hot, then it will make uncomfortable. So most buildings, they don't maintain it less than the required levels. And so what can carbon dioxide create to your health? So it can create just 1 or 2 hours of exposure to greater than 1,000 ppm of CO2. It can start creating problems, and prolonged exposure will create things like all kinds of lung problems. Even lung cancer can happen because of CO2s. And so there are some buildings, many large buildings, they operate at greater than 2,000 ppm, which is extremely bad, and so that can lead to much more cardiovascular diseases and so many things, and prolonged, and we all spend 80%, 90% of our time indoors. So this is a major problem, and so this is how it was looked at. So like when we understand the indoor problem because of the CO2, historically how the CO2 has been going is 80,000 years. The CO2 levels has been less than 300, or around that 300, or much lesser than many times. So, but in the last 70 years, can you see the graph in that 1950 onwards, 1950 to today, it has gone up drastically high. And so if you see the last 15 years, it's a steep hike. And so this is how it is heading with the current levels of pollution that we are creating, emissions we are creating. So what they see is future, like the 600 is the optimum level. When the moment it goes beyond 600, it's going to be very bad for our health, because 24/7 you'll be breathing that kind of an air. And so like what they say is like, by like 2100, it can reach levels up to 1,200 or 1,100, which is extremely bad for our health, because outdoor air quality, if it's so bad, indoor air quality will be even further bad. And so this is a major problem which will affect the entire globe, all human beings, all animals, all life in the world. So like what the International Energy Agency has brought in is, they want to put a limit to net zero by 2050. So the net zero by 2050 is what we are all aiming to achieve. But then to do that, you also need to look at the development and all that. And so like if to 2050 we reach net zero, then we may lie well within the range. But if we miss that, 2075 is the next deadline, and 2100. So beyond that, it's unstoppable. That's what they say. And so the emissions need not only the displace people, but it can also affect the entire globe in terms of every living human being. So coming to particulate matter, this is the other thing which not many are aware of, because The PM 2.5 or PM 10 is also due to emissions mostly, and it's also to some extent to sandstorms and things like that. But major to PM 2.5 and PM 10, the particulate matter, which is the particle which is mixed in the air, which is very high these days in many cities. And what it can create, again, it can create coughing, wheezing. It can, 5 years before they've identified that it can create cardiovascular diseases and all that stuff. So PM 10 is something our lungs are designed to take care of. So if we, to a good extent, it can filter PM 10 getting into our system. So like you can take care of, by doing some good exercises, cardios and things like that, you can keep your lung good. But then PM 2.5 is something which your lungs cannot filter. So if your lungs cannot filter PM 2.5, that PM 2.5, the particles are going to get mixed with your blood and it's going to get circulated throughout your body. So this can create much more problems. And so this is something which is not yet realized by most people. And so this is the reason why the emissions have to be stopped in a very urgent fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Giridhar. So I think you brought out a very important point. A lot of us don't think enough about indoor air quality. And the answer to that problem is far simpler than you think. It's not as complex or as expensive as you think it should be. And that is what Giridhar has proven in his building. So these are things that I think all of us need to start thinking about and start taking action on. And you talked about the climate goals. I know at COP26, Prime Minister Modi also made a lot of commitments to India's goals and by when we could expect to be carbon neutral. Now, the last question I have, I know we are almost out of time, but I just want to have one last question from Nikita Nishita, is that in a world where 800 million people are without access to energy, electricity, do you think that technologies such as these, right, cutting-edge technologies, green technologies, have a place? Because people are worried about survival. People, they don't, and you've seen this even in developed countries like the US, right? Republicans are restarting coal plants just because it's a political issue. They want to start coal plants and they want to throttle investments into green sources of energy, simply because it's a political issue and because it's cheaper. So in light of all these things, how do you think people, young entrepreneurs like you, visionary entrepreneurs like you can tackle this problem? And what do you think you would want to do to accelerate this? Because if it's too late, and you can see some of the graphs that Giridhar showed, right? Beyond a certain point, if it's too late, then you're done. You can't really, come back to, a position of safety. Who would like to go first? Nikita, Nishita? All right.
Right. Again, thank you for that question. I think it's a very important, vital space to look upon and retrospect of how things have been moving forward. Because even after we have access to technology, we have access to a lot of luxury in life, there still remains a major chunk, not only in India, across the globe, where a lot of these facilities are not accessible. So a lot of people still live in that space where electricity is still a luxury. Maybe even traveling by a bus or car is also a luxury. So in that space, if I talk about technologies and how we can change or we can make things better, I'm actually very glad that we've started realizing before it's too late that we can't reverse and get back to having a carbon neutral space. So we as of now we have time. We have I wouldn't say we have ample time, but we still have time to cut down on the emissions and the kind of troubles that we've made so far, and be in a space which is more carbon neutral. But talking about technology being accessible to the grassroots levels, it takes time to have technologies, do the R&D to build it, and then have possible technologies which can be available for the grassroots level. Everything comes at a cost, and it's difficult to have one-size-fits-all mechanism. So it's not always possible to make a product or a technology which could fit from the very bottom of the pyramid to the top level. So there are times like, a very example is Mr. Patman. You had Unilever solving a big problem, but at a level which is suitable to them. And then Mr. Patman came in to solve the same problem at a level which he thought needed the attention. So it's typically a pyramid space where the bottom is larger. It's always a far bigger space than the top. And we look at catering to a space which we can answer to, and that's what we typically call as a target market. Eventually, we understand that we can go higher than the market or we can come down, because now we are pretty much established at where we are. So, for any technology to go across the genres from the very lower levels to the highest levels, I think for me, the very typical strategy would be to first establish yourself in a genre which you can cater to. Where your product market fit is available, where as an entrepreneur, your business is being answered to. It's not only innovation, it's a business. So at a level where your business is being answered to, where you're comfortable and you establish yourself. And once you do that, then you have a space, definitely scope, and at the same time, a lot of financial resources to even burn cash if you have to go below that strata, or if you have to go higher, you have that little margin which you call, say, a 200% profit margin, or so on and so forth. So typically for technologies that we are working on and how things have been moving on the tech space, deep tech, clean tech, battery tech that we are very close to, sustainability, clean energies, I think these are specific spaces which typically are catering as of now, where they think, the companies think that they can fit themselves. Eventually, I'm sure with the way the globe is evolving, we are sure to move across the strata and then be able to be accessible to a larger number of crowd than what we are able to cater to right now. Yeah, I'd just like to add on to that. So it's not like the target market that you have or what you cater to. What I believe is it's also very important for individuals to realize their part, and for government to have that inclusivity for specifically in terms of energy, because what I believe is it's going to be a matter of time before we kind of switch completely to renewable energies. And I guess a very particular example will be steam engines in trains, because millennials or people who are born today, say in the last 10 years, they are not aware of trains running on steam engines. So I think something similar is going to be the scene with electricity, with energy efficiency, that people are not going to be aware that initially it was being generated out of coal. So we are going to move to an economy where it is going to be a lot of renewable resources being used. The only thing that probably we need to figure out is how can we do it and how quickly can we do it. Because a little problem with renewables is that not every geography supports every kind of renewable energy. So every city has their own way of catering to renewable energy. So something like a coastal area would probably be more efficient at tidal energy, whereas maybe places in Rajasthan would be more efficient at wind. So this is what we have to figure out, that which location is good at what kind of renewable energy. And I think then probably the path would be clearer for things like that to be universally adopted across the globe.
Fantastic. Thank you. I think that kind of brings us to the close of the presentation, and I just want to emphasize a couple of points, a couple of learnings from today from our panelists, from Nishita, Nikita, as well as Giridhar. Number one, there are 51 billion problems to be solved. No, that's per ton of carbon dioxide that's being emitted. That's a problem because there's that you need to start solving as entrepreneurs, as young students, and these are areas where you need to set your sights on. Because solving these problems is going to be, not just good for the earth, it's also going to be good for your economy, for our economy. And like Nishita said, there are so many ways in which you can tackle the problem. It need not be just one route to take to solve this problem. There can be n number of routes, like the completely contrarian approach that they've taken with biodegradable batteries. That is something that nobody even thought of, right? But they read a textbook from 1956 and they identified a way in which to start putting it into action. So that's innovation for you, and that's thinking differently for you. Similarly with Giridhar, I think we also learned that when you need to do green buildings, when you need to go green, it doesn't cost you money, it actually saves you money. And this is something that all of us can do in our houses. It doesn't have to be a fancy building, it doesn't have to be a fancy house. It can be a simple, a 2-bedroom house, it can be a simple 1,000 square feet office building, but if we have the will and if we follow the right practices, it is eminently possible to adopt green building practices and save money while also being friendly to the environment. So that, I think, has been some wonderful takeaway from our sessions. Thank you, Nikita, Nishita, and Giridhar. I wish we could go on, but we have a constraint of time. So before Pradeep, kicks us off the stage, we will honorably leave the stage. And thank you all for being a patient audience, and we hope to be interacting with you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Check. Thank you so much, Prashanth and team. And now, Prashanth, tell me who is Nikita and who is Nishita.